Hi everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about the novel Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, what you should know about it before you start reading, and what you're going to need to do while you read, and when you're going to be evaluated over that. So the first thing I want to make sure you know is that you do need to read and annotate this entire novel by Friday, November 30th. On November 30th, we're going to be taking a reading check test over the novel, and I will be checking your annotations in class. Do keep in mind that there are a lot of extra essays and things in your edition of the novel. You don't need to read all of those, you just need to read the actual novel that Chinua Achebe wrote. So let's get started doing some background about the novel, so you will be in good shape for that test. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention are a few things about the setting. The setting of this novel is in Africa, specifically in the country of Nigeria in the 1890s. So this is a novel that is going to be in a very different time and place than everything else that we've read so far this year. We're moving away from sort of the ancient world into the modern world and reading in a different a novel from a different continent. The main conflict in this story is about the conflict between the Igbo people and the British colonists. The Igbo people are a tribe from Nigeria, and in the 1890s, this is the time period when England and the other European colonial powers are really strengthening their hold on Africa and expanding their empires into that continent. So you'll see over the course of the novel the Igbo going from a people who are pretty much entirely independent with little to no knowledge of Europeans to a people who are dominated by British culture and the British government. The story more specifically is about a man named Okonkwo. And Okonkwo, over the course of this novel, is going to be attempting to lead himself, his family, his village, and his culture through many changes. Okonkwo is going to be an important person, a powerful person in this community, and the novel is in a large part about how Okonkwo deals with the changes brought in by the advancement of the British Empire into his homeland. So I just mentioned that this novel takes place in Nigeria. So I wanted to show you a map of modern Africa and where Nigeria is. This is a political map of Africa today, and Nigeria is right here. It's actually the most populous country in Africa and the 7th most populous country in the world. So it's a densely populated country. It is resource rich. It has a lot of oil and other natural resources. So as a result, it has one of the strongest economies in modern Africa. But it also has a lot of the social struggles that come with having a lot of money from natural resources. There has also been a lot of conflict in Nigeria because of its religious demographics. Like a lot of places in Africa, it is fairly evenly split between Christians and Muslims, and that has led to some social unrest in the last few years. So you may have heard about that. But our novel is not set in the present day, so let's take a closer look at Nigeria and talk more about the country as we're interested in it in Chinua Achebe's novel. So here is a close-up map of Nigeria, and as you can see, this map is divided up into the areas controlled by the different tribes that made up Nigeria before its organization into a modern political state. As you can see on this map, there are several large tribes that controlled most of Nigeria. The largest ones were the Hausa, the Yoruba, and the tribe that we're going to be concerned with in Things Fall Apart, the Igbo. Okonkwo and Chinua Achebe are both members of the Igbo tribe. In your novel, it's spelled I-B-O. In most modern documents, it's spelled I-G-B-O, but it's always pronounced Igbo. And this area right here is what's going to be referred to in the novel as Igbo land. So right away you can see that one of the sources of conflict that's going to happen in this story with the European colonists is that they're thinking of this as a modern country that they think of as Nigeria. But Okonkwo thinks of himself as a member of the Igbo tribe. He doesn't live in Nigeria, he lives in Igbo land. This is a cool picture I found to try to give you sort of a sense of what the Nigerian landscape looks like. When you first think of Africa, you might think of, the Sahara Desert, you might think of the Congo and the jungles there, something like that. But as you can see in this picture, the landscape of Nigeria is not too unlike the landscape that you might be familiar with from parts of the United States. It's a temperate country, and the people in our novel are going to make their living as farmers. So it's a kind of a lush landscape, not unlike ones that you may be familiar with. This is another picture that I found trying to give you some sense of context. You can see some Igbo people in this picture dressed in ceremonial garb. In particular, the gentleman here in the center of the picture wearing the large mask is participating in a ritual that you will learn about when you read the novel. So this gives you a little sense of what some of the things that you're going to hear described in the story may look like. And this is a picture of a bunch of yams. You're going to read a lot about yams when you're reading Things Fall Apart. There's really no way around that. The yam is basically a sweet potato, and it's the main crop of the Igbo. It's the crop that sort of sustains them in the same way that maybe a crop like corn sustained the Native American population. So when you read all about yams in this novel, this is the kind of thing that you should picture. Okay, now I wanted to go over a few key things about the novel. To reinforce, it was written by Chinua Achebe in 1959, but it is set at the end of the 19th century. So that makes this an example of historical fiction. If you don't know what historical fiction is, this is definitely a concept you should take down in your notes. Historical fiction is a fictional story, a made-up story, that takes place in a real time period from the past, especially one that the author has researched and includes real historical information in. So Okonkwo and his family and the people that he interacts with are all fictional characters. There was no real Okonkwo. But the world that he lives in is one that Chinua Achebe had done a lot of research into and was very much a real historical setting. What Achebe was trying to do when he wrote this novel was respond to European novels about Africa. He was an educated man, Chinua Achebe was, and what he discovered as he was earning his education was that most of the fiction that was written about Africa was in fact written by Europeans. So it had a tendency to be about Africa as this sort of uncivilized, uncultured place that was brought into the light by Europeans. And Achebe did not like that view of his homeland, and he wrote this novel in a large part to react against that European view of Africa. One of the ways that he did that was by demonstrating his own literacy. The title of Things Fall Apart, that's an allusion to a very famous poem called The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats, and that's a poem about the end of the world. And in a lot of ways, Things Fall Apart is a novel about the end of the world. It's not about the end of the entire world, but of the world of the Igbo people. Some things I want you to pay attention to while you are reading this novel. First, there are several motifs in this story. A motif, as we've talked about, is an idea or an image that keeps coming up in different ways throughout the story. Traditions is a key idea in this novel. Like I said, Achebe was reacting against this European idea that Africa had no culture of its own prior to its domination by European colonial powers. So one of the ways that Achebe tries to dispel that is by talking a lot about the traditions and the culture of the Igbo. He wants to make sure that his readers understood that prior to European colonization, there was a thriving culture there with its own unique and important traditions. He also has a recurring motif of fables and folk tales. Please, while you're reading, pay attention to the fables and folk tales. You're going to see characters telling little stories in a lot of different ways, a lot of different fables and folk tales to make a point or to teach a lesson. Those are very important, and it's one of the main ways that Achebe develops the themes of the novel. Okay, talking about themes, there are several key questions that Achebe is trying to answer in this novel. The main thematic questions that Achebe is asking in this novel have to do with what happens when cultures collide and what makes a culture a culture. So this is very much a story about how we define ourselves, the society, the culture that we come from, how those cultures and societies change and evolve over time, and what happens to people who don't want to change and evolve with those societies and cultures. So pay attention to those things while you're reading. The last thing I want to do in this video is give you an assignment. Here's a list of terms. These are all Igbo words that are going to be used throughout this novel. And what I would like you to do in your notebook is to put definitions of all these terms in your notes in your own words. There is a glossary in your novel that has definitions for a lot of these. I don't want you to use those definitions. I want you to at least rewrite them in your own words. And then I want you to include a page number reference to the novel to illustrate where you found that definition sort of in action. I'm going to check those for a grade on test day. I'll post this list on Angel, but it's right here in the video. So again, these are the terms that I need you to define and in your own words, and I need a page number for where they come up in the novel. So I hope you enjoy reading Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. I hope this information is useful to you.